Hello and welcome everybody. In this video I will break down my Hellfire Sentinel for you, an engineer and alchemist based build with insane fire damage that can apply 3 stacking burn debuffs at once, which last for double the usual amount. The difficulty you see on screen for Root Earth is Nightmare, and the Geisha footage is recorded on Apocalypse difficulty. It is all about seeing the world burn with this build, so for all you pyromaniacs out there, I got you covered. Burn damage is one of the highest ticking dots in the game, and we'll put it on steroids while also doubling its duration to 20 seconds and thus doubling its damage potential. The burning debuff from different sources also stack and do not override each other, which means especially chunkier enemies are literally melting. For the usual trash mobs, you can simply circle between one of your 3 debuff sources, and when things go tough, you simply crank it up a few levels. For this build, I deliberately avoided using the Ring of Malevolence, which would keep the uptime of all weapon mods to 100%, but this is supposed to be not working as intended, and I presume it will be fixed soon. So I simply did not use it for the sake of proving the build works without it. As usual for my solo player focused builds, I integrated high survivability and even a self-revive option. To achieve all this, I decided to go with Engineer in the primary class slot and Alchemist as subclass. I did play around with different variants, but the Engineer feels a bit crippled when not having the ability to overclock his turrets and heavy weapons. In this build, we will nearly only use the fire turret and not carry the weapon. In extended fights, you can basically set down the turret, overclock it for 25 seconds. After that, the turret will be able to fire continuously for another 25 to 28 seconds, while the cooldown for overclock is ticking down. That means 50 plus seconds uptime and only around 20 seconds downtime before you can place the turret again and hit overclock. Thanks to the Engineer's Relic perk, you can shorten the downtime further or negate it completely by using your relic and adding 15% of ammunition to the turret. We also have the fantastic Fortify trait without investing points into it, and a damage reduction of 15% with a gradual refill of your ammunition for as long as we stay close to the turret. The Alchemist will boost skill damage, which is the turret or heavy weapon of the Engineer, by another 25% and in addition grants a plus 5% crit chance. I choose the Alchemist over the Medic here because we have a more flexible skill set that includes a fantastic damage buff. The Alchemist's heal also applies the auto revive feature for as long as the buff is up, which is 20 seconds, plus the time you are standing in the zone of the buff. The Alchemist skills activate super fast and have reasonable cooldowns. On top, we get a small buff to pick up additional ammunition, and a relic use also applies a random buff for 60 seconds, which turns a relic activation into quite a chunky tactical tool here. In this setup, you will get an insane amount of health regeneration for 15 seconds, a random 60-second buff, which can be plus 5% damage for example, and you add 15% ammunition to your turret. Some really nice synergies at work here. As for traits, I maxed out the what I consider basic traits like Vigor, Expertise, Barkskin, Spirit and the Lifesteal trait. From the final 13 points I put 10 into Triage to further enhance our high passive healing capacity, and put 1 point in Strong Back for the armor I wanted to wear and keep the fast dodge roll. The last 2 points went into ammunition capacity, which I felt was the most useful investment, but feel free to allocate them somewhere else. The long gun I use is the precise and awesome to handle pulse rifle. As usual, you can find the wiki links to all equipment I use in the video description. This weapon is obtained on the route. It has a positive stagger and weak spot multiplier to give us some extra punch when the weapon mods are on cooldown. To take out single trash mobs on any difficulty level, it is totally sufficient. The Deadly Calm mutator helps to further boost the rifle damage by 20% and adds another 10% crit chance. As handgun I have the MP60 that you can immediately unlock once you start the game. I do suffer from the Cas is vanished bug at the moment, so I have a hard time getting enough low level materials to gradually upgrade all other weapons. But I will think the Laser Beam Accurate Tech 22 from the handler's starting equipment that you can also buy from Bravos would work just as well. I use the Harmonizer mutator here to faster refill the long guns weapon mod and offset the not integration of the Ring of Malevolence because of its bugged behavior. But as long as the ring is so overpowered and depending on how good it is after a fix, you might want to use a different mutator like Bandit for example and slot the ring. Now let's look at the weapon mods where things start to get hot. The devs seem to be pyromaniacs themselves with how many fire-based weapon mods they put into the game, or maybe they just like the Rammstein stage shows. Let's talk first about the one I did not use and why. Firestorm is for sure one of the coolest looking mods and very powerful, but also very static in its use. Yes, it sucks in enemies, but in tight environments you can easily kill yourself with it, and in open areas it often sits in the wrong place in a firefight with a lot of movement. It also has a high mod power requirement. Witchfire on the other hand has 2 charges, is much faster to refill and deals an absurd amount of damage in this setup. It deals nearly 250 damage per second for 5 seconds and applies 20 seconds of burn for close to 2400 total damage. The line is pretty wide and very long and also reaches most flying enemies. That thing alone melts everything in sight and is outright hilarious when used in tight corridors or dungeons. Hotshot is my other weapon mod that will increase base damage by 15% for 20 seconds. But not only that, it also turns regular shots into fire damage, which in this build is amplified by another 30%. It also applies a burn debuff for 20 seconds for a total of 1800 damage. You could place the mods on either weapon. I usually put Hotshot on my long gun and Witchfire on my handgun, but it would also work the other way around. Now the third weapon in this round is the Engineer's Turret, of course, with its incredible uptime. It deals a huge amount of direct fire impact damage that can also crit, and another solid burn debuff for a total of 3 simultaneously active damage ticks. You get the picture. Once you settle into a good rhythm between those weapons and mods, you sometimes just sit back and enjoy seeing the world burn. I had a pretty mediocre Venom boss fight on Nightmare, where I was more running away in the end than anything else, but the burn debuff and the turret finished the job while I was not even facing the boss. I had the most pure and unhinged fun with this build pretty often while recording the footage. Now let's go through the rings and amulet. To no surprise, we need the Talisman of the Sun for 20% increased fire damage and 50% higher burn damage. This is combined with the Timekeeper's Jewel to double the debuff time. I decided to go with the Alumni Ring for another 10% elemental damage, but the Stone of Balance with 7% to all damage, like skill damage for your turret and normal ranged attacks, would be just as good. The other ring slots I use for enhanced survivability. I prefer the Hardened Coil over other rings because it kicks in early and provides a total of 15% damage reduction. The Ring of Crisis or the Hardcore Metal Band, I love how they named this ring, are 2 other options for this slot. I personally think the Hardened Coil is the most reliable of them. To get the high passive heal setup working, I slot the Reserve Boosting Gem. You can watch my comprehensive solo player guide to learn all the details about that and how to get the relic in a step-by-step guide. In combination with our Tranquil Heart relic, we then gain a high basic passive heal that ramps up significantly below 50% health. At this point you also have the whole 15% damage reduction from Hardened Coil active, and you can double the heal over time effect for 15 seconds when using the relic, which then also refills 15% of your turret's ammunition and gives you a random 60-second Alchemist buff. As for relic fragments, I go with additional health, ranged crit chance and ranged damage at the moment, but feel free to choose your own setup here. Armor is a wild mix for what I consider to look decent. Yes, I know the helm is not the best choice, but hey, sometimes looks are all what matters. So it is the Navigator's helm, the Night Stalker's chest piece, the Challenger's leg armor and the Leto Mark II gloves, which are thankfully overwritten in their appearance by the chest piece. Brings me to a total of 50% damage reduction from armor, plus 10% from traits, plus 15% once Hardened Coil kicks in, and another 15% if you stay close to the turret or carry the heavy weapon variant of it. On top, your passive heal should be mostly enough to refill your health bar quickly, and you also have access to the normal dodge roll. Chunky, quick on your feet and constantly refilling your health bar should be good enough to carry you through most of the content. So there you have it, a fun and powerful build that thankfully has not to watch out for accidentally burning potential teammates as long as you play for yourself. Otherwise, you might become the most hated team member very quickly. If you have additional suggestions or improvements to the build, please feel free to add a comment. For now, this is all about Remnant 2. Stay tuned for more upcoming build videos. Take good care of yourself and enjoy your gaming sessions.